let's turn our attention to one of the teams that's had all the headlines, probably not for the right reasons in the off-season, and that is the Dees. So tumultuous has their off-season been, and they've been fascinating, haven't they, since they won that flag. Haven't won a final since, despite finishing top 2 in both the seasons. So it becomes a big year for Simon Goodwin. That's his tenure there since 2017 as coach. Obviously, really sad news regarding Angus Brayshaw, and Joel Smith clearly not going to be part of their planning either. They've added Billings and McAdam, maybe young Kynan Brand, and maybe a couple of the youngsters to come up and add something, because they probably, I mean, they've got absolute superstars at the top, but they don't want to have to rely just on Gawn and Petrarca. And then there's obviously question marks over Oliver as well. Yeah, I mean, such a strong footy club over the last 3 years. You know, they've only been outside the top 4 for a total of 2 weeks in 3 seasons. They've been outside the top 4. So this is a really consistent, reliable, strong football team. I know everyone harps on straight away they go to the finals and the straight sets exits, but even them, there's some factors there. I mean, they had 30 more inside 50s than Collingwood. They had 28 shots at goal against Carlton in the semi-final. Yes, we understand they lacked composure and weren't able to finish their work, but for me, I'm not jumping off Melbourne. I still think that they're in the right age demographic. I think they defensively in contest are so strong. I mean, even their offence, everyone sort of is talking about their offence. They were 6th in the competition for points for. They averaged 90 points a game. Collingwood averaged 93. So it's not like this team can't score. They just have been let down, we know, by their ball movement and their entries going inside 50. But I like the adjustments. I like Petty when he comes back to play forward. I like McAdam. Billings adds a bit of class. I still think they're really strong. And the ball movement side of it, we don't talk enough about assistant coaches. Kingy, we're talking about this off air, but Andrew McQualter coming across from Richmond to add a little bit of the offence and a bit of ball movement and a change of angles and a different voice, I think can help Melbourne's ball movement. And I'm certainly sticking with them this year.
Yeah, I'm probably the opposite. I think that they've had a great run. They've been terrific as a football club, and we've all admired where they've been and what they've done. We laud their leaders. We've talked about Gawn, Petrarca, Viney, all these, May behind the ball, Lever behind. I mean, they're Hall of Famers for the Melbourne Football Club, and we take our hat off to them and what they've been able to do. But I just think there's too many self-inflicted wounds through one off-season, and the stress of everything going on around the edges, and you start wasting too much time on things outside of football. You stress the football club, not just these individual players, and it permeates through the group. Now, I don't think this list is as deep as what it was last year. I think they've allowed some players to leave that weren't probably in their best 20 players, but somewhere between 20 and 30 guys like Jordan, Grundy, Hibberd retired. So there's a little changing of the guard there with that next rung of player, which puts more stress on those senior players to lead the way. Of course, they're good enough. We've seen them at their very best. But I just think that the stress on the football club will have an impact.
Do you not agree?
No, I see it differently. I think sometimes these situations galvanise the playing group. Like, I understand the club's got some issues they're going to have to work through on these things, but as a team, you can focus in and use that and go, right, we are going to be as tight as ever.
What's the evidence of that, though? Which teams have galvanised in the past to go on and win a flag when there's so much happening and bubbling in the background? I've seen more teams fall apart than galvanise.
Yeah, you could argue Collingwood have had some off-field indiscretions the last few years. There's been talk with Ginnivan and DeGoey and Crisp and these sorts of things, and they still sort of came through it and won flags. And
Richmond were able to have a few.
Richmond had some issues in the hub. I do think I feel, my view is that sometimes it's overplayed in regards to the team. I think this will be like the redeemed team. I think Melbourne will have a chip on their shoulder with how they've gone out in the finals. I believe the leaders have still got some really good footy left in them. I also think there's a lot of upside in some players. So we talk about the depth, but McVie, Bowie, Rivers, Pickett, Van Rooyen, Chandler, Sparrow, they've still got a heap of improvement in them to go to the next level. 14 games at the MCG where we know they have a really strong record. I've just got faith that they can bunker down as a group and go again.
Brayshaw, a huge loss. Into just output game day, big loss. His leadership, his ability to go into different zones, play half-back, play on ball, play wing, play wherever you need him. And Oliver, I mean, the question mark, is he there round one? Is he there all year? What do we get out of Clayton? It's just in the back of my mind that there's a potential for more things to go wrong than there are to go right. If they go right, they're in the mix. But I'm just hesitant to lock onto that.
Yeah, I wrestled with all those factors. I put them in the end. Got them in the top 4.
Yep.
just because of what they have at the upper end. But if they were to lose a Gawn or a Petrarca or with injury or so forth, and even just the way Lever and May marshal things in defence, if one of them's not there, they could easily miss out. But I've got them in. You've got them in as well.
Yeah, until it does fall apart. If it does fall apart, well then there. But I'm going to bank that it won't and that they'll be there again.
Yeah, I've gone the other way, as I said. I really like the pre-season of Cozzy Pickett. I know he's not there for round one, but going in for more centre bounce opportunities will be great. Conan Brown, you touched on before. Caleb Windsor, Tholstrup. These guys, they're going to get opportunity.
He looks like someone who'll be a real help to them, doesn't he?
I think he'll play straight away.
There are reasons for both, and I've taken the other side of the coin on this one.
All right, another team that was really difficult to judge on what they might give us in season 24 is the Sydney Swans, grand finalists obviously in 2022 and fell so far last year, but still managed to scramble to make it to the 8 as John Longmire enters his 14th season. How much difference will a couple of old pies make in Brodie Grundy and Taylor Adams? Injury to Luke Parker on the eve of the season, not ideal. James Jordan is there, of course. The retirements of Franklin, Hickey and McCartan are not insignificant as well. They're the 8th oldest list and the 5th most experienced. So from that point of view, they should potentially, given what they did in 2022, have pretty high ambitions for this year.
Yeah, they should. And as you touched on, for me, the toughest team to assess, to try and work out where to put Sydney. I've had issues with them in the past. You look at their profile from last season, solid but not elite, pretty good with points against, points for. Their turnover game's pretty solid. We know their contest and clearance game has been a massive issue and they've addressed that with the personnel. They base their game on their pressure, which is elite. But when you take a look, they shouldn't have beaten Adelaide. We know about the score review. And then the North Melbourne game where they had the extra player run on the ground. They shouldn't have won that either. And if they don't, they finished 13th last season. And do we have a different perspective on the Swans? They were 2-8 against the top 8 teams last year. They've got some young talent. We know about that. Goulden and Chad Warner and Nick Blakey's an absolute star. They've brought in some senior players. For me, it's going to rest on their former All-Australians. So the guys like Heaney, Papley, Mills, those sort of players, if they can recapture their All-Australian form of a couple of years prior, then absolutely they can be a finals team.
They've been given the best list free kick of all time with Brodie Grundy at 29 years of age, low kilometres on the clock. He's a dual All-Australian, a dual best and fairest winner. Only played 6 games in 22. He played 17 games last year, but only low percentages in the ruck for a guy of his standing in the game. So that's an absolute bonus for the Sydney Swans. I see them differently. So if the game stopped at three-quarter time, which we know it doesn't, but they led 17 times at three-quarter time last year and only won 11 of those games. Well, that's just blowing opportunities. Yeah. So that's a huge number. When you think Collingwood was 16 from 16, led, converted it. Carlton, 11 from 11. GWS, 10 from 10. Brisbane won 18 of 19 when they led at three-quarter time. Sydney won 11 of 17. So that's just, for me, that's just dropping the ball. There were games that were almost comical. The GWS game where Toby Green stood unopposed with 30 seconds. Things just went wrong at Sydney last year.
Adelaide.
So I can see them really bouncing. So they get 3 or 4 players that they're going to play. Brodie's definitely going to play. James Jordan's chronically underrated. I think he'll play a lot of minutes in this midfield, which will force Parker and Heaney forward more. They'll become more damaging. They won't just be Franklin-centric.
Well, how does the post-buddy forward line look to you?
I think it works around Heaney. I think that Heaney and McDonald are going to be everything forward. But Parker goes forward. Parker, he's a guy that can kick 4 or 5 goals in a game. I know he's got the arm issue at the moment, but we're talking, the full season in its entirety. So I'm excited about where they can go. Errol Goulden, your man, you talked a lot about him early last year, prior to everyone getting on board. Chad Warner is a star factor player. They've got all the boxes ticked for me. And I just think a bit of maturity, situational play, correct a few things, the small things. Yeah. They're winning 15, maybe 13 to 15 games.
Just defensively, I've got a slight query with the Blakey, Tom McCartan. Rampy's now getting on. I don't really think Hamling helps them too much in that facet.
There's a loss.
Yeah, but you're right. Every point Kingy makes is spot on. Look, we've all had to leave out some good teams out of the top 8.
You haven't left them out of the 8.
This is the team I might get egg on my face, absolutely.
Wow. Out of the 8?
Out of the 8. I've got them just out of the 8, Hutto. And this is the one that could backfire on me and it might get used against me later in the year.
I've got them in the 8, and they could even be a top 4 team. They're one that I'm really excited by, Sydney, and particularly because of their star factor midfielders.
Your arguments a minute ago was just elevated. I've got them to the top 4.
Yeah.
Now.
Did you just get that changed?
Just got it changed.
Jeez, you're good.
Let's talk now about the Tigers. And Adam Uze, of course, takes over the reins. It was a year of change last year. He is now the permanent replacement for Damien Hardwick. There's 3 cups in the last 7 years. They kicked over 50 goals less last year than in season 22, despite playing that one extra game. And they're crying out for the return of Tom Lynch, who could make a big difference. Sam Naismith and Jacob Kazitsky come in. Obviously, the likes of Cochin, Revolt and Soldo are gone. As it stands, they're the 4th oldest and the 10th most experienced list. So, again, to me, they're one of those teams, if everything goes right, they could be right up there, but if not, they may well not be.
So in terms of talking about our graph here, when you win 15 plus home and away games, you're in contention. They've maximised that. Have a look at that with the premierships there. That's why we're talking about them as a dynasty. Now they're back to that 9 to 14 win bracket, which most teams bouncing out of. The key is to get out of it heading north rather than south. Most teams win 8 games, 0 to 5s for your rebuild teams. So I think a fresh voice is good for this group. New methods. I'm excited by what they can do now. Where that takes them, who knows? But I'm really excited about the role for Shea Bolton, to be playing more inside the forward 50. Can he have a Toby Green type year? This is the sort of talent this guy is. He's a goal kicker. He does special things. But I'm just not sure. He's gone 23, 43, 31 goals the last 3 years. Has he got a 50-goal season in him?
If he plays as a permanent small forward, it'd be hard to put it past him. He gets enough shots at goal, doesn't he? The way that he plays. Look,
how many does it need to be for that to be a win for the coach?
40, at least 40, yeah. And what the midfield do without him in there? I mean, is he going to go to the bigger bodies? It's going to be Hopper, Taranto, Jack Graham's been in there a little bit. Yep. It's going to be fascinating. It's a challenge for Adam Uze because it's not going to be a full-blown rebuild with this team. It's like it's a transition phase because they still have a big core of their group that are 27 and under that are still hopefully going to be there when they do go south again, led by Hopper, Taranto, Rioli, Baker, Bolton, as you touched on, Noah Bolter, etc. So it's how quickly they can transition these under-22s, the Thompson Dowes, Sonsi, Rioli, Gibcus, Samson Ryan's got to get more opportunity, Judson Clark. So giving games to these guys and seeing how quickly that they can find their next wave of players that can forge finals and beyond.
I'm a huge rap for Tyler Young down back. I think in one-on-ones last year. He showed he could be the answer. He's involved in 42 one-on-ones in the D50, lost 1 in round 24. So he nearly got there, but he's a player to build around. Gibcus is back and healthy, and gee, have they been waiting on this guy to just lock down centre-half back. Looks really exciting. A couple of the youngsters, I thought Dow really turned the corner in this pre-season, and now he will be a first-pick midfielder, winning his own ball. In at the centre bounce, winning clearances. And Steely Green, I think, is along the Liam Baker type mould. Looks a little bit unassuming, a little bit compact is a nice way of putting it, Joey. But kid from South Freo, I think you'll play some pretty. You're going to love him, and I think the Richmond fans are going to love him. The worry for me is that a bit like Joel Selwood leaving Geelong, you don't lose players like Rewalt and Cochin and roll on unaffected. It will hurt at times in game, late in quarter, late in game. Just what impact that has on their season, who knows? But you just don't lose those players without any pain.
Yep. Yeah, I just don't know with Richmond where, in the end, I've got them in the bottom 4, but they could easily make. Well, I don't know about top 4, but they could certainly make the top 8.
I'm the same, and I feel a bit stiff. I don't think they should be a bottom 4 team. You put their best team on paper, and it still looks pretty good. It's just a matter of the ability of those.
Still going to have an impact,
exactly right. It's just phasing out some of their veterans too is going to be an issue for Adam Uze. And to try and get more opportunity for these youngsters. So it's going to be a transition year, and I just think because of how competitive it is, not by design, but they probably will be one of the sort of bottom 4 or 5 teams.
My worry is the next 2 to 3 years. There's only 2 picks. 2 top 20 picks from the last 8 drafts left on this list. So they've had guys, Higgins is gone, Coleman Jones gone, Collier Dorgan's gone. There's quite a few that have just come and passed on, and they've traded a few out to get some other players in. Like
so you're defying the system, though, aren't you? Again,
well, you pay a price at some point.
Yep.
At some point, your list has significant trauma, and I think that's still coming. So. This year, I think it will be an exploratory year for the new coach, and let's hope he can find a couple.
Yeah, if Tom Lynch is back and firing, it could make a significant difference. But we will see. Time will tell. Well, it's been tough times for North Melbourne fans for so long, but a young, talented group is emerging, and one of the favourites, and I think not just of North fans, but footy fans in general, is George Wardlaw on what we've seen so far. And we can't wait to see what he and this young band of North Melbourne mids particularly, or those running off half-back, can deliver, because you know, it's been hard, just the 12 wins in the past 4 years, and haven't played finals in that whole 7 years that we look at leading into each team. But they have the young talent, and hopefully it won't be too long before we see them delivering, Kingy and Joey.
And I think Wardlaw is going to become the cult hero very quickly down at North Melbourne. He's my Rising Star winner. I think you'll see a second-year spike in him, like from the past of Clayton Oliver and Paddy Cripps and these inside bulls that just go bang and almost become the number one man in the midfield at such a young age. Love the way he goes about it. We understand where North Melbourne are at in their development. They've still got a lot of work to do. Their profile in all three phases is still pretty poor, but I think we can start to see them building something now with the young sort of run and gun midfielders and outside players they've drafted and brought to the club. They're calling it North Ball now. It's going to be this high sort of run and gun handball style of footy that I think might catch a few teams by surprise. I think that, you know, the back end of last year, they lost 5 games by under 10 points and then knocked off Gold Coast in that final round of the season. So there were some signs there that I wouldn't want to sleep on North Melbourne this year, because they could catch you by surprise.
If they could get that out of the blocks, like while they're young and fit and haven't yet been belted up during the season, like you could easily cop them when they're hot early, couldn't you?
Yeah. I've been here before many times with the Kangaroos.
I know,
coming in with optimism, but I think this is the first time you can see it. It's not hopeful, you can see. I mean, Wardlaw, like you say, he's attack on the footy. I'm not sure I've seen a young player just go after the ball with just a doggedness and a ferocity that others stand back and they just watch, they spectate how hard this guy goes at it. He'll win the Robert Rose Award at some stage through his career, if not multiple times, for just being so tough, reckless in fact. You know, he's just got to stay on the park. Yeah. That's the problem. He's had enormous injury concerns. Colby McCurch is as good a kick as the Kangaroos have had come in the doors for quite some time. And unfortunately, the fate of the footy club is going to revolve around those guys. Wardlaw, Sheasel, McCurcher, and then forward of Senilaki. I mean, that's the reality. So they're young bodies. You're asking a lot of them. Luke Davies-Uniacke is a top liner in our competition. Just need a full year out of him. I think with more opportunity and a faster ball movement pattern, you're going to see the very best of Nick Larkey. I think he could easily win the Coleman medal this year after what's been an unbelievable patch of football. His loyalty to the football club, I think, will be repaid this year. All the concerns are down back. You know, who's centre half back, who's full back, how much do they bleed? Because you're not going to have a model, a game plan that's going to save them. And there'll be some big numbers kicked on them through the course of the year. But you just can't worry that. You've just got to push forward. Yeah,
as I said, they're running gun handball style. And if McCurcher and Sheasel play off half-back, they might catch some teams napping. A bit like Hawthorn. They might win some games, but they'll get scored against. Yeah. Going the other way, I've got the tools are no doubt an issue. So the defensive stocks, you know, Comben, Core, Logue, seen some injuries. Sherry's been injured. You know, is Coleman Jones, the second banana that can stand up. So that's going to be the big factor for them that's going to be costly. But we like the way they're going. I want to see them win a few more games, you know, knock off a few teams rather than just being competitive and getting close. And we know that they're on the right track, and that's what we're all looking for.
So Dawson will get a look, Pink will get a look, Comden will go down back and have a crack at centre half back. We know about Core and Biggie Newen. Another one will get a chance. Sometimes you just don't know. Like Jeremy McGovern was picked 44 in a rookie draft. So opportunity is a beautiful thing. Harris Andrews picked 61. I'm not saying these guys are necessarily going to be that, but you're not asking them to necessarily separate games at this stage.
So if they can hold up, then that does give you the chance, doesn't it?
I think the Taron Thomas situation will impact. I mean, there's a guy that won games
had
off his own boot.
Back half of last year.
He did. And so that's going to have a lag effect, if you like.
Zerha
being fit again, and Stevenson looks positive from what we've seen in pre-season from him.
He's had a very good pre-season. Kangaroos lost 12 games, conceded 100 points 12 times last year. That's just too many. Yep. And then they had 7 losses north of 40 points. Let's just hope that gets minimised this year. But play with some excitement. Forget the scoreboard for a while and just see what these kids can do.
Yeah, still the youngest and least experienced list, and I suspect as a result of that, we all have them down the bottom four, don't we?
Yep, absolutely.
No easy answer.
But they'll take a couple of scalps, though, this year, for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, let's move on to the West Coast Eagles, the final team, of course. Probably the less said, the better about their recent history. It was the 2018 flag, a gradual decline, and then all of a sudden off the cliff, just 5 wins in the last 2 years. So many injury concerns over the last 2 seasons, and it hasn't really started that well in that regard this year. Hopefully those fortunes will change. Harley Reid and a bunch of youngsters, and hopefully we'll see some things, some substantial quality coming through and some hope for the future for the Eagles and their fans.
Yeah, tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's really hard to talk about teams at the absolute bottom of a rebuild. This club's been here before. In 2010, they won a spoon. Grand final 5 seasons later, flag 3 years after that. In 2001, they won 5 games. Grand final 4 seasons later, won a flag the next year. So this club refuses to accept mediocrity, which puts pressure on everyone at the football club. It puts pressure on your senior leaders, guys like McGovern, Barras, Yo, Gaff, Kelly, to stand up and to elevate their football, which, to be fair, has been subpar for a little while now.
Yep.
So they've got to present better and they've got to play better. They've got to perform. They've got to lead. Because guys like Elijah Hewitt, Ruben Gimby, Harley Reid, Noah Long, they can't be the reason you win games. They've got to be in the wake of the leaders, just getting towed along. So those kids have looked terrific through the pre-season period. This is the bottom of a rebuild. So you've got to temper your expectations with the Eagles. Some don't like hearing that, but that's reality in 2024. I think they'll undergo a drastic change at the end of the season. I think Don Pike's come in to make some calls. He's not there to change the song and bring the banner back. He's there to get this football club back on track. So the back half of the year will be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be a slow burn. I mean, but we are starting to see now these youngsters. So you touched on that, the forward line, led by Oscar Allen, who's still a young man. Noah Long, Elijah Hewitt. Tyler Brockman is going to be an absolute beauty. He's come to the club, sort of being forgotten about. And then obviously Reid and Jinby and Chesser starting to build through the midfield. A lot will rely on McGovern and Barras in defence. But
what will the expectations be?
Well, just to get. I don't think they should be putting too many expectations. I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it? I mean, just let the kid play some good footy. He's going to show some things throughout the year where you go, wow, we can see that he's going to be a star. Protect him a little bit. He'll get some centre bounce time. I don't mind him playing across half back. He might even spend some stints inside forward 50, but at least, for me, last year they changed the way they played. So they started to play the more high handball game and evolve a little bit, which is what they needed to do. And at times they did have some good transition from their back half when they were up and going. So continue to develop the game style for the future. Keep getting games into these kids and just see if they can be more competitive off the back of their senior players.
5 losses by north of 100 points. 16 by north of 40 points. So that's a starting point for me. Not necessarily winning games, but being in games or being more competitive for quarters and then build that to a half and then build that for a full game. When you got these young kids in, you're going to lose games of footy. It's as simple as that. It's just how you lose and how you manage the expectations and show there is light at the end of the tunnel. West Coast fans are realistic, but they need their coach and their pillars of this football club to stand strong and say, no, we know where we are. And then in the off-season, get some West Australian free agents back. They've got to hunt and hunt hard.
All right, our predictions for the West Coast Eagles, I think we've all still got them having a pretty tough season. I don't think it can be as bad. I'm confident it won't be as bad as last year. Hopefully they can get more out of their senior players with fitness, and good to see Elliot Yeo bursting out of a stoppage and that sort of thing. So hopefully we can see that.